Let's get into our topic for the week.
Yes.
We have a fun one, I guess. I guess.
I guess.
So,
awesome.
Nerds.
Nerds.
It's the best.
Us. So otaku, geek culture, nerds, geeks in anime. We see them a lot. Like I even wrote a list of some of the more notable ones, or just the ones that come to mind immediately.
From recent shows.
Like
These are the ones that came to my mind too. Yeah.
There's like a big one for like Keima from The World God Only Knows, Tomoko from Watamote. She's like
100% otaku. Yeah.
Yeah. Mikorin from Monthly Girls and Zaki-kun. Jojiro from Charlotte. He's like an idol otaku in a weird way.
Yeah.
Just,
Such a turnoff.
Yeah,
they always tell him. Yeah.
But really, it's like, calm down, dude. Onodera from... Onodera. Wrong one.
The waifu.
I mean, she's, the best waifu. She's not a nerd. Jojiro from... Oh, I just did that one. Onoda from Yowamushi Pedal, who's like the cutest otaku ever. Daru and Mayuri. Like, Mayuri is...
She is an otaku.
Absolutely
She's
an
otaku.
She is a geek. She's like super into cosplay and other stuff.
Yeah,
Like,
but Daru is like the ultimate, almost scarily obsessed with like his 2D waifus, and
He's like your stereotypical kind of otaku.
Yeah.
He's otaku with a capital O.
Whereas, we can get into this a little more later,
yeah.
but
and so then we have like people in SAO, which is like they're playing games.
Yeah,
like,
they're
they're
playing
super
games.
nerds. Like they're going in virtual reality, like heavy into it. Like pretty much anyone in there, but like people in No Game No Life who are proclaimed neats.
Yeah.
And then of course Umaru. Who
Yes,
is
the trash monster of the
inside
anime
us all.
world.
Our favorite trash monster.
Our favorite trash monster.
we say that with so much love.
Yeah.
We do.
So like they're like even though these are all otaku or geeks or whatever, like they're portrayed in so many different ways.
Yeah.
And that's kind of something I wanted to get into, and it's how geek culture is represented in anime, because typically a lot of anime are watched by people who are super into anime. And so it's kind of weird when you see geek culture kind of in a weird condescending way, but and also in how they use geek culture to kind of analyze a different kind of people and how you the different ways to enjoy it.
Yeah.
Like if you look at Umaru-chan, she's very in the closet. I mean, she
Yes.
does everything she can to hide her identity. Like when she gets home, she just like lets loose. But at the same time, both versions of Umaru are both her. You know, they're both very mature. Like even though she's hiding it, she's not faking herself to an extent.
Yeah, I think that's why I like that show so much, is because I relate to her a lot. I was never like that much of a trash monster because I got home and I did homework for like 10 hours. But like,
I mean,
You
unless
should
you
have done what I did, which was do homework at school and then come home and be a trash monster.
oh, see, I like stayed up until 3 a.m. doing homework every night in high school. Like, it's bad. But so I
What
didn't.
high school did you go to?
Yeah, no kidding.
I went to American high school where I had to go to college. Anyway, but I relate to her a lot because even though I didn't have as much time to be a trash monster at school, like I remember one time I had been babysitting and I had my DS in my backpack because I did homework, and then when I was done with my homework, I played my DS. I forget. I was probably Pokemon, let's be honest. But I came to school the next day and my DS was still in my backpack, and I panicked because I was like, people are going to know. People are going to know I'm such a nerd. And I like threw it in my locker and I like walked away. I was so worried because I was trying so hard to not be super geeky. And part of that was because the other like nerdy guys I knew didn't really respect me as a nerd. Like they kind of would talk down to me like, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. Not all of them, but that happened a lot to me. And then the people who weren't nerdy, I was trying to be less nerdy. So like, oh, if the geeks don't like me, then I'll just be with the not geeks.
Right.
Which did not work. Would not recommend. Be yourself. But that's why I like that so much, is because like at school I was always like, I'm trying to be so perfect, and I do all these things, and I go to karate, and I'm so good at school, and then I'd get home and I'd be like, it's time to play Halo. Like, nobody knows I like this. So yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really sad that in a lot of ways otaku always feel like they have to hide their hobbies, because I was the same way. I mean, it was just not many people knew that I had a PlayStation, and that, you know, I mean, until our school got an anime club officially my senior year, not many people knew that I was a huge Sailor Moon fan, because it was still considered nerdy and geeky, and people would make fun of you, as opposed to now where it's mainstream, and hopefully people are not doing that immature stuff, although sadly they probably are.
Yeah, but I liked what you said, Miranda, about how both versions of her are still her.
Yeah, so she's never faking it either way. Like
she's the perfect her is still her. She's still good at school. Like she's not. You can't fake that to an extent.
No.
but she also loves things.
Yeah, and she's
that
also
are
really
geeky.
It's interesting that she does try so hard to hide that, and she gets very embarrassed whenever her friends are borderline figuring out who she is or what she actually is into. And I hope they explore that a little bit more.
Yeah.
And maybe it's just because she has that perfect girl stigma on her and that she has to do everything right and she can't like geeky things. People have to think that she goes home and reads like long, beautiful novels that are classics and stuff. Anyway, I think they even touched on that at one point that that's what people thought she did. That's like she lives in like a mansion and she's you know, really perfect and have this crazy great life. And maybe she's also just trying to live up to that because there is a lot of pressure from being, you know, maybe like a little bit more popular too, that you have to live up to this thing because then if you don't, then maybe people will start teasing you.
Yeah.
Although I like
think.
the blue-haired girl, Sephiroth, or I can't remember what her name is.
Sylphine?
Something. I keep want to call her Sephiroth because that's just what my mind is.
Sephiroth.
Yeah, so I'm just going to call her blue-haired Sephiroth. But she's also, what's interesting is she was also in that fighting tournament, which I thought was an interesting twist because it's like, oh, it's another female, and it happens to be the person who's always trying to foil Umaru at school. And I'm wondering if they'll become friends and sort of stop, you know, Umaru will stop hiding her identity because it's like, oh, hey, here's somebody I can relate to who's also an otaku because the whole reason Umaru wins that tournament is because her friend gets really embarrassed because she sees either her brother in the audience and it's like, oh my gosh, I've been discovered. And I'm hoping the arc is just be yourself whenever, but we'll see.
Yeah, it's interesting. Just I like Umaru when she's in her like cap mode where she's not the chibi version of herself, but she's going to the arcade or something. Yeah. Because I feel like that's the marriage of the two kind of sides of her, which is something that, like, again, I relate to her a lot because I see that in myself now that I work at IGN, where I'm like, oh, I can be smart and, like, normal quotation marks, but also come here and be like, so I bred Pokemon all night. And then people are like, that's cool. Like, so I like that version of her a lot. But I'm interested to see how blue-haired Sephiroth, whatever her name is,
like
now
it's a weird pronunciation, right?
Yeah, it's like Sylphan Ford, but she pronounces it weird.
Yeah, she pronounces it funny.
Shidufine Ford or something. I'm interested to see because there's definitely something there with her also being embarrassed about. She also wants to be the perfect
with her brother
girl.
At least.
Yeah. But then she wasn't embarrassed because she announced her name to everybody.
Yeah,
so
she
I'm
announced
interested.
her name, but I don't know. It was weird that she got all embarrassed when she was like, "Oh my god, my brother's in the audience, and I don't want him to see me."
So I'm very interested to see that.
Yeah. Another like kind of opposite end, like kind of geek character is Tomoko from Motomote. So we've talked about that a little bit in the group, as some people are discovering it. So this person has crazy social anxiety. I think she's just getting into high school. She's just got out of middle school. Just trying to figure out herself. Like, she's super into dating sims and some of the more dirty dating sims and anime and games. And she just wants to kind of do her own thing. But she also wants to learn how to be popular. Yeah. And there's, like, a lot of funny episodes, like, of her trying to fit in and failing epically. And she doesn't have a lot of friends. Like, she mainly just hangs out with her brother if she can or by herself. And just, like, a weird look at how social anxiety affects someone in, you know, high school. And it's like one of those shows that people say is like super cringeworthy because she messes up a lot. And it's kind of sad. But also it's just like a weird look at like how someone tries to figure out life on their own. I think it's good that we get a variety, like I said, of like variety of geek people in anime. Like there's all sorts of people. Like there's not just one, you know. Like, that's the annoying thing. Is like whenever you see in mainstream media, it's like the geek has like the glasses that are broken and like, you know,
or they're just socially awkward in some way. They're all kind of typecast. Whereas these characters that we listed off earlier, like
they feel more genuine. Like
they represent different ways you can be a geek kind of person,
or different kinds of people who are geeks and kind of figure out how to express themselves in different ways. Yeah, like I think kind of eventually, Watamote doesn't ever get to a brilliant conclusion kind of thing. Like she gets in contact with one of her middle school friends who used to be kind of geeky like her, who's now like a really beautiful young woman who's really popular with everybody. And she's just like, what happened to you? We can't be friends kind of thing. Aww. So it's just kind of that, I mean, she's like, it's kind of like that intimidation thing, right? Like this person's changed and now you don't know how to relate to them anymore. Yeah. And so it's just like an interesting look at that and how it's sad, but it's also good to realize that people do have these anxieties and have these issues and sometimes like need help or finding their own ways to work through them. And it's just like a really great show that I liked, which has an ongoing manga that I need to get into.
I love that. I love that exists because I know that's the kind of thing that probably would have really helped me, because I actually do have social anxiety. Like I have a diagnosis for that. And I love that something like that could help somebody else. Like they could see a representation of themselves. And that's why I like it when, like, representation is so important to me, and all kinds of representation. And so different kinds of people being nerdy or different kinds of ways to be nerdy are so important, because I feel like that could help a kid who doesn't have a lot of friends, who's just sitting at home, like not thinking that there's anybody like them. I love that so much. That makes me so happy.
Sorry, just jump in.
No, yeah,
I
go
love
ahead.
that. You know, one of the things I was thinking about when I was looking at our agenda and looking at this list was how recent a lot of these series are. And I think just kind of like zooming out and looking at it from kind of a sort of historical perspective, I think it's super nice that the word otaku has kind of changed over time, right? Because like when we were watching, like I keep saying this because we're a little bit older than you guys, right? But when we were watching anime, like when we first started getting into it, otaku was kind of a dirty word. Like,
it was like Melvin from Sailor Moon was the punchline in so many episodes. It was kind of like
it's kind of parallel how in Western America, at least American culture, how being a geek or a nerd has transformed from being something that was essentially also a dirty word you didn't want to be associated with at all, to being almost a badge of pride, and often a badge of pride, especially like here at IGN, obviously, and then with people who are like super into the same stuff you are. And I think it's super nice to see that there's this diversity in representation, but also even when they are portraying somebody who has that kind of classic stereotype sort of, that set of traits that would fit the word otaku as it was used way back in the day, that even in something like Steins Gate, like Daru is actually a pretty cool guy. Like I actually have a lot of respect for him, because even though he's a super perv, he really knows his stuff, and he's a really solid member of that team. Like they could not get by without him. And the show doesn't really make a big deal of it, but you can just see how vital he is. And in some ways that's a way of it's like a really subtle way of celebrating that, right? Yeah. That you can be not perfect looking, you can be like super pervy, super nerdy, and you can still really contribute and be a really vital member of a team. And I really like that.
That's like my favorite
they don't have
part.
to be like, they don't have to be necessarily a different type of nerd. You can still be that quote unquote stereotypical nerd and still be an awesome person.
Stereotypes originate from somewhere for a reason.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, so you can be that stereotypical nerd and have it not be the punchline.
Exactly.
Which is very important, which is something that I don't always see in Western media. You still see popular shows. We all probably know which one.
Yes,
I was going to name it. I hate that show.
I don't like that show at all.
I cannot watch it without getting angry.
Yeah, and like a lot of people like that show. Again, like if something's popular, it's popular for a reason. But to me, that show is one giant punchline. Haha, let's laugh at the autistic people. Like legitimately, like Sheldon is autistic. Like he fits the diagnosis or the definition of autism, and it's not funny. Like it's not funny to me. And I hate that the stereotypical nerds in that show are always the punchline.
Yeah, it's like, oh, well, look at these dumb geeks who can't do things right.
Yeah,
I mean, sometimes
can't talk to girls.
Yeah, like sometimes there are redeeming things, but then also, if you like overshadow that with just all the, well, let's just like throw them in a bag and laugh at them, kind of thing, then it just goes away.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter
and
as much.
That's my favorite part of Steins Gate, is that all of the characters contribute something. And going back to Mayuri, who's definitely a total geek. She's super into cosplay. She likes but she is very much understated. Whereas Daru is like 110% into it, but they're not treated as, like, I don't see them as being unequal in their love of things. And they're treated so respectfully.
And they're not caricatures either, right?
Right.
Where I feel like what I really like about going back to Daru is just that he's just who he is.
Yeah.
And you can call him, it's kind of like going way back to earlier in this conversation with the whole like Makuro no Monday thing, where like this week wasn't as bad as previous weeks because we could actually respond to that character as a character and not critique how the portrayal was done. And I feel it's the same with Daru, right? Where you can just say like, man, you're a perv, like knock it off, but not necessarily think that he's, as you said, a punchline or that he's just that creepy pervy guy in the corner.
Yeah, all the characters in that show are treated with such respect as characters, which is one of the reasons it's so good, and I love it more every week.
So before we continue on to Watch Party, I just want to say
premature, we're not there yet.
People of the world, let us know about your favorite geeky characters, or who you think is just a good representation or just well developed. I mean, that's what it comes down to, right? Just well developed characters who are done well and consistent, and of course not the punchline of every joke. I mean, they can be if that's their purpose and if they're done well. Then, hey,
Hey, I liked Melvin in Sailor Moon. Tuxedo Melvin is my favorite episode.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
just saying.
Yeah, it's not
I
to
still
say
felt
that
bad for him.
punchlines sometimes like a person screws up and it is funny and that can be the punchline, but
Yeah.
it's when it's consistently like it's when the person's existence is the punchline,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like haha, you're such a nerd. That's so funny, right? It's
Yeah.
like no, there's nothing funny about someone's existence. Like I don't think there's anything funny about how any individual is,
Yeah.
you know?
yeah. So let us know.
Yeah.